All right, everyone, welcome to the Roundtrip Panel. We're going to go ahead and get things started here since we have some time. So really excited to have a great team of folks up here today before we get things started. So feel free to make your way up if you want to use some of the space or in the back if you're going in and out. But I'll just go ahead and provide a brief introduction. My name is Nate Bridgewater. I'm a current student, a first-year student at Chicago Booth. Excited to introduce our moderator, Alex, and he's going to moderate and kind of host the entirety of this panel. So a bit of background behind Alex. Alex has spent his career in the shoes of the entrepreneur, strategist, and capital markets specialist, having developed his finance acumen as an investment banker, serving companies large and small, and his entrepreneurial skills as the co-founder of a multi-service financial advisory firm. During the first part of his career as an investment banker with Solomon Smith & Barney and later Headwaters MB, he completed engagements involving strategic alternative reviews for multinational corporations, liquidity strategies for middle market entrepreneurs, sell-side advisory assignments, equity and subordinated debt offerings in the public and private capital markets, and fairness opinions. As an entrepreneur, Hodgkin co-founded Intrinsic, a financial advisory firm that he has helped grow from a kitchen table concept to one of the largest firms of its kind in the Rocky Mountains, servicing some of the most well-known and well-respected institutional investment firms and privately held companies in the region. As a steadfast supporter of entrepreneurship through acquisition, he has been instrumental in the creation of Chicago Booth's ETA program, where he currently serves as an entrepreneur in residence and senior advisor to ETA. Hodgkin earned undergraduate degrees in economics and electrical engineering from the Claremont McKenna College and the University of Colorado, respectively, and an MBA from Chicago Booth. He's also a CFA charter holder. So I'll go ahead and hand things off to Alex to get the panel going.
Okay, so I've been doing this for 9 years. I've never been more excited to moderate a panel than this one. It's a gift to me because I've known a number of these folks since they were contemplating doing ETA, and now I get to see them back on a panel on the other side. And Nikita as well, so we have great representation. And I just learned that my firm did some work for her on the early side, which is really cool. But I would just say I have so much respect for the folks at this table and the journey that they've went through. And we were just talking about something I'm going to weave into my introduction here, which is, there's an authenticity to this career path that you can't be found in many other places. And one of the things that I think all of these folks embrace is the notion of being learn-it-alls as opposed to know-it-alls. And they're tremendous athletes, and they've learned a lot along the way. And I'm looking forward to having them share their wisdom and experience through this panel. So we've got a bunch of ground to cover, so talk fast if you don't mind. And in your introductions, if you wouldn't mind sharing your career prior to ETA, the ETA mechanism or path that you took, the company that you acquired in the year, a brief description of a brief description of the exit, and then just real briefly what you're doing now. All right?
Right. So I'm Andrei Papayanopulos. I was born and raised in Mexico City. Prior to going to Booth, I worked at a private equity fund down in Mexico. I then did my MBA, graduated in 2014, did a traditional search fund, ended up investing down in Mexico City on an insurance broker on 2015. Ran the company, did a couple of follow-on acquisitions. When we invested in the company, it had around 1.6 million in EBITDA, exited in 2020 with 10 million in EBITDA, exited to a New York-based private equity fund. And yeah, regarding the exit process, it was probably not the best time to sell. As you know, 2020 was kind of the peak of the pandemic. We thought that, and we'll talk about this later on, but we thought that it was the right time to exit the company. The thesis had panned out, and that's when we decided to sell.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nikita, Sunilkumar. I am a Kellogg grad, 2017. I'm a former engineer turned consultant, went to consulting after business school. Knew I wanted to do search and kind of work slowly to meet investors and build a traditional search cap table, and launched my fund in 2019. Acquired a business in early 2020, which was in the geriatric primary care space, mobile geriatric primary care. Unfortunately, the week before the first fatality from COVID in Washington State, the business was also based in Washington State. So really hit the ground running as far as fun and exciting times. We had a pretty quick turnaround as far as, pivoting to telemedicine and really doing a lot of different things in terms of the model and operating and things changing on us just because of the climate we were in. But really, really great journey, and had an unexpected sort of inbound offer from a venture-backed group to acquire us late in 2021. So that exit went through in December of this past year, and now I am the entrepreneur in residence at Trilogy. They were also my lead investor, so now I'm trying to work with other searchers and kind of stay connected with the community through this role.
Great. Reid Tileston, Booth 2015 grad. Before business school, I owned and operated a chain of Anytime fitness clubs in California, so I've been a small business owner-operator for quite a while now. Went to business school, great experience, had the honor of being a TA for the first search fund class at Booth. Also working with Alex, helped plan the first search fund conference, so super excited to be back for that. Acquired an industrial services firm in Milwaukee in June of 2019. It does the dirty work that keeps Milwaukee running. So I was self-funded, ran it, grew it for 3 years, sold it at the end of May to a private equity-backed strategic, and now we are focused on some personal brand building, getting a doctorate at Case Western in entrepreneurship, starting to write a book, which is a whole interesting endeavor in itself, and of course want to figure out ways to get more involved in the Chicago Booth ETA community so we can make it the best.
I need to be you when I grow up. Wow. Brian Vanderheyden, Booth 14. Before business school, I worked in a Fortune 100 healthcare company, so corporate guy. Really wanted to branch out, do something entrepreneurship, but didn't know exactly what that was. And when I came to Booth, heard about ETA towards the end of my degree, and went full on into that. Raised a traditional solo fund in 2015, searched for exactly 2 years. I acquired a security business. It was primarily commercial security, so access control cameras. We also had a residential component. Grew that business over 4 years, and we sold to Johnson Controls last summer. And now I'm investing in search, also trying to find direct deals. So we're kind of doing the same thing again. It's fun.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Brian. Since I've got you warm here, we're going to start the first question with you as well, and then we'll come back this way. Looking back on your journey, what was consistent with your expectations with regards to your ETA career path, and what were the biggest surprises and areas of learning?
Yeah, I think I didn't know what I was getting into, like a lot of us probably. So I didn't really have a ton of expectations. I think one of the pieces of feedback I kept getting from people was, watch out, investors are sharks. You know, you're getting into this financial world and you've never played there before. And one of the pleasant surprises was the mentorship in the community. I was really struck by that, not only from kind of what we cultivate here at Booth-Kellogg, but more so from the investors during the search phase, sitting on the board, and then that even extended to post-sale mentorship around what types of avenues are available to you, what do you want to do. They helped with a lot of introspection. So I would largely say the best surprise and upside has been the relationships in the community, stronger than I anticipated.
Thanks. Reid?
I completely echo that. I mean, the search fund community, the ETA community is very collaborative, which is a great upside to it. The unique thing for me is that I had experience owning and operating small businesses before I got involved in ETA, so I had the expectation that it was going to be got to be all in to these endeavors. It takes a lot to own and operate and run these small businesses. So I had that expectation before, and that expectation absolutely proved to be true during the time operating as well. And you know, at the end of the day, the people that I've met throughout the process is what the best part of it is. But you know, being in the ground, operating, got to be all in to do it.
I probably would say the whole theme around learning it all is true. I think I had expected to have challenges kind of come at me in all these different directions, and then having to just cope and figure it out as I go with the help of mentors, investors, my own team, things like that. And that was true. I mean, you can figure out a lot when you're in the seat and need to figure it out. It'll kind of happen, but The thing that was unexpected, obviously, was just everything else, surrounding the environment, the macro environment, the business, all of that kind of really changed pretty dramatically. But focusing on the day-to-day and the things you can control, I think got me through that, which was really, really, it gives me confidence for really any endeavor I do in the future.
Great.
Yeah, for me, probably what was more surprising is how time-consuming it entails to deal with people. So on my prior experience at the PE shop, I probably spent around 50% of the time on spreadsheet, PowerPoint, and then 50% of the time on meetings. And even though the place I used to work at, their mantra was being involved in the portfolio companies and generating operational value. Once you go and operate a company, it's a way different story. When we acquired, I remember the first day I received about 200 emails. My WhatsApp was blowing up. There were people literally standing outside of what was my office, like if I was a famous person, which I definitely was not. And all the people they were like with a bunch of problems like that need to be resolved today at that moment. So the plan that we had set up in mind, it was much more difficult to implement because we got up early in the morning. We dealt with the WhatsApps, we dealt with the emails, and then late at night when everyone had left the office, at that point we started on planning like how we're gonna fix this, how we're gonna grow, and what are the changes that we're gonna make. So that was definitely a big surprise. What did fuel my expectations was I think how rewarding it is. Once again, if you're working somewhere else, in a certain way, you do not see the full value of your work. And in ETA, doing a search fund, you essentially see it every day. So that's really rewarding.
Great. So now we'll kind of do a chronological journey through the ETA process. And in the spirit of, if anyone knows the novel Hero with 1,000 Faces, we're going to start out highly optimistic, and then we'll go to a dark place, and then we'll come with a happy ending, which is great. That's what this panel is all about. So I'll start with the first question, which is pulling a page out of the MBA handbook. Did you have a 100-day plan, an approach to value creation? How did that go? What worked and what didn't? How did you adjust, change the approach as you learned about the business, got more comfortable in the role, and what did you have to do that was least expected? So, and Andrei, you want to start your warm on this one?
Yep. So once again, it was a big surprise for me and my partner when we first invested into the company. So we did have a 100-day plan. And to be honest, we stuck to that plan pretty much in no way because once we got into the company, we thought that we were going to do X, and from day one we realized that was not going to be possible. So we shifted a lot on spending the first few months trying to first know the business and then creating the right teams and the right processes to run the business. So we went on to the first board and we said to them, like, the first year, there's no way we're going to hit target in terms of revenue and EBITDA. We're going to have to first change the processes of the company, change the team, and then we can grow more rapidly. Obviously, the board was not enthusiastic about that. They pushed back really hard. They said like you have to meet sales and whatnot, and we said like if we grow the top line with the current team, with the current processes, we're just gonna get a new client and we're gonna lose it in 6 months or 1 year. So during those 100 days, we spend so much time kind of changing the teams, changing the processes, so we could grow up in a more organized manner.
Great, thanks.
I'm trying to remember, but I have a feeling that I did not. I asked one of my investors for a template for a 100-day plan. They sent it to me the week that I closed. I don't think I ever opened it. I don't think I ever put anything in it because I didn't have a chance to. So my 100 days was really around just survival and just, yeah. So that was the first 100 days. I think it ended up being a huge benefit because I think obviously if I had stuck to what I had intended to do with the business, it would not have worked given the circumstances. It really had to be very literally a clean sheet of paper approach to how we did everything. So the first 100 days was really around pivoting to telemedicine. I was tech support for most of that time. Like I would literally be calling patients in the morning and explaining to an 82-year-old how to get on Zoom and like get on the appointment with their doctor. And it was very helpful. I mean, you learn a lot about your business by just doing everything in the business. And so super helpful, but also kind of forced me to say, I kind of had a little bit of an advantage in the sense that because the goal was just survival, we could do a lot in that time to kind of get a lot of things done that otherwise would have taken a long time. So, for example, ripped out our tech stack, put in a new EMR system, which if you've ever worked in healthcare is like normally a 3-year endeavor. We did it in 6 weeks over a holiday break. So like just ripped everything out and just did it all ASAP and built a new pipeline for talent and things that would have taken quite a bit of time. And ultimately not knowing if that was going to work, and so took quite a bit of faith on my board's part to be okay with that. But I don't know that I gave them much of a choice, honestly. So just because it's either that or not survive. So in that sense, really both positive and negative came out of that. And but I look back now and just that whole time is a blur. So I couldn't tell you really whether my first 100 days was anything like expected.
Great, thanks.
Great. Yeah, first 100 days, 3 simple objectives. First and foremost, just get payroll and the HR right. Bottom line is someone's not getting their paycheck, there's going to be significant issues. So focus on the HR and the payroll, get the people part of it right. Then secondly, it's just a golden opportunity to get out and actually learn the business. So every single chance that I could get, we do a lot of field work, right? So it's just individuals in trucks driving around Milwaukee, pumping, cleaning, maintaining things, out in the field, learning. Brian sold his company to Johnson Controls. Johnson Controls is one of our customers in Milwaukee, Glendale actually. So Saturday morning is the only time they allow us to actually do work there. So I was there Saturday morning with the crews, going out there, seeing how things got done. I was with the office manager learning about AR and AP and just understanding those pain points. Because the credibility issue that I faced is that I'm from California. My background's in the fitness space, and I have an MBA. This is Main Street industrial services work, so I had to prove to them that this individual that has almost no handyman skills whatsoever is actually credible to be here and run this business. So we have a fleet of commercial trucks. So before I bought the business, I was really thinking through how do I work through this transition. So I made it a goal that I was going to get my commercial driver's license as a way to show everybody that I am serious and I know what I'm doing. So my 100-day plan was don't mess up payroll, get in the field, and get my CDL. I got my permit before I bought the business, so I was out driving the trucks with the old owner, of course, next to me because I didn't have my CDL just yet, going out there showing that, hey, I know what you guys are doing, I know what you're going through, I'm happy to do it, and I take this endeavor insanely seriously. So first 100 days were a lot of fun, and use those 100 days as the real basis to understand what can I actually accomplish with the business, what changes do I really feel credible I can make, and more importantly, are the team members here the ones that are going to be on board as we push things forward?
Yeah, mine was consistent. My experience was consistent with a lot of that. I remember having a very beautiful Gantt chart for 100 days, and I don't remember the contents of it, but it looked good. It was more about, like you guys had said, it's more about a peacekeeping mission and letting them know that you're not going to come in and slash jobs. That's what everybody's afraid of. Don't miss payroll is a great piece of advice. I do remember I walked around with a black notebook and took a bunch of notes, and what I came to find out later was everyone thought I was writing names down for who was going to be cut. So just like your behavior and everything you do is overly scrutinized in this role. I think maybe more important than the 100 days, because the first 100 days was very much just a learning experience. It was great. Like I said, peacekeeping mission. Kind of more important is the first 6 months. You're identifying what growth levers you're going to pull. You have an opportunity to take complaints from the employees and make changes, and there's sort of no ownership of of the past. But at some point in time, you're part of the problem, and so getting those changes made quickly matters. And so I think emphasis on the first 100 days of learning, but then first 6 months of finding the value drivers and making changes.
Right.
And building upon that, no joke, I had a Surface when I was talking to one of my employees, and they told me like 6 months later, they thought I was recording what they were saying, so I could use that to let them go in the
so
future.
paranoid.
Yeah, it was. I just laughed at it. It was crazy, but so paranoid.
A great segue, guys. Okay, so I'm going to bundle a few things into some topics so we can get through everything. And Brian, we'll start with you on that end. But and I heard some of this touched on in all your guys' shares. But spend some time talking about the importance of people. How did you go about crafting and developing your team? Did you hyper-focus on certain functions areas first? What was the process like for identifying talent and hiring, firing as needed for your business? And then if you want to weave into that how you developed your leadership abilities through that process as well for the audience to kind of learn from, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. People are everything, good and bad. I think in my experience, we implemented Traction, EOS. I went to Booth, so I need a framework for everything. And it was really a get it, want it, and are they capable framework, which more so than, I kind of had a feel from hiring and firing over the years at Abbott, but this was a tool to help the employees hire properly, the next level down. So that was important. In terms of positions that we focused on, it was sales and a CFO. So we brought in a VP of sales. That was a board connection. I'm always interested to hear how some of the talent is sourced. That was a board connection there, someone that had worked for a board member in the past. And then our CFO was a local connection. So just being ingrained in the community and trying to solicit talent that way. So they were really strong performers for us. The other thing I'll mention is these small businesses, my experience was there's a lot of untapped potential. So there was a guy who, they brought consultants in 2 years prior to my arrival. They tried to fire this guy. And his name is Tom. He ended up being my right-hand man, my COO. I thank God they didn't let him go. He was an unbelievable addition to the company. So I think you don't know what you're going to get into, and you have to be very purposeful about top grading the employees, having some framework to do it. Yeah, I like to think I got better at that skill over time. One of the things I'll mention in terms of leadership ability is it's cruel to not fire someone who's not performing. It's actually a cruel thing, and getting them out faster is better for them and it's better for you. I had no appreciation for that at the onset and probably took too long to fire, and I'd like to think I got better at that over time.
Yeah, building upon that, hire slowly, fire quickly. Because the issue is that if you don't fire those people, you're just enabling that bad behavior, and that bad behavior will just, like a bad apple, spread throughout the organization very quickly. So cannot emphasize that enough. Yeah, bottom line, these businesses are people. I was lucky, though, Alex, early in my career with the fitness centers. I met two mentors, one of which is the founder of Fleet Feet Sports, Sally Edwards. Other one, John Pickerel, founder of a fast casual restaurant in California, Buckhorn Grill. Both in their 70s, owned businesses for over 30 years when I knew them. Mentors of mine, they said, listen, at the end of the day, it's the people development that will give you the most fulfillment in these businesses, independent of how much money you make. So any endeavor I get into, it's just all about taking the team members and figuring out how you can push their lives forward and help them make more money and this and that. So great opportunity with Giddings Hawkins is that it's a lot of working class and middle class team members. So, whether it's a couple guys didn't have driver's licenses, right? So I would individually invest my time to help them get their license so they could go out and, drive a car. there's a huge CDL shortage in the US, right? So I got my own CDL, but in doing that, I trained myself to actually help other team members get their CDL. So a variety of the team members got CDLs. We also do a lot of regulated pumping, which you have to have an operator license for. So I help the team members study for the test, get the certification so they could make more money, business could make more money, everybody's better off. One guy hadn't filed his taxes for a couple years, so we went through that process and even helped him apply for an offer in compromise with the IRS. But the key is that investing in the people is what it's all about. Then you develop a reputation of the kind of company that invests in the people, and that's a great way to help attract and grow things going forward. And I take a lot of pride in the fact that everyone who stayed at Giddings Hawkins from the time that I bought it, minimum increase of compensation of 17% up to 38%. And when I sold the business, which we can talk about more, everybody that stayed and everybody did stay got, somewhere between a meaningful and a life-changing retention bonus. And at the end of the day, that is what this is about, is the people development.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think I had the privilege of being leading a team that was predominantly women, so obviously a clinical business, a lot of nurse practitioners, medical assistants. We started around 55 employees, and when we sold, we were about 110. So really doubled the team effectively, and a lot of that was growth in each of those departments, but driven by the departments themselves. So really empowering the leaders within each group to decide how they wanted to hire, identify the characteristics of what made their team stronger, and then putting them in front of candidates as soon as possible and sort of taking the administrative piece of this out of that equation. And that really helped because, especially because I could not really intervene on the clinical side of the business. I legally couldn't make decisions, that would affect patient care. So it had to be done by someone who had a clinical background. And hiring is a big part of that, is evaluating what are the skills that are needed to be successful in those roles, et cetera. So I'm pretty proud of the fact that we were able to hire, like I said, double our provider staff in 2021, which was notoriously difficult to hire healthcare providers. We benefited from, honestly, the burnout at the hospital systems and the big healthcare employers, and we were able to offer them more flexibility, more of a mission statement, and just an opportunity that they otherwise probably would not have encountered. Certainly some challenges with that, like I said, predominantly women in the team, but one of the first people that we hired on the clinical side who ended up being promoted rapidly was a man who was a nurse practitioner, or a physician assistant, stepped into sort of a mid-level provider management role. And I had a call with another provider who was female saying, this doesn't seem right. Like, why are you promoting this person who's new to the team so quickly? You really need to, especially as a female CEO, does that feel right to you? And I really felt very sort of called out by that, and really had to think about, like, are we making sure that we are keeping opportunities open for people that are really reaching the most number of people, not just, folks who are putting themselves out there and sort of being more aggressive about it. So that was an interesting moment of thinking about how do you keep things equitable and also, best for the team and so on. So we worked with the team again, grew the management team over the course of the year, gave a lot more opportunities for folks, really worked with them to make sure that was viable, given that, people were still having childcare issues, people were still working with COVID, like just a lot of constraints that affected people in very meaningful ways, which in healthcare you cannot really separate out from their day job. So you can't just be like, no, that's your problem. No, it's everybody's problem. So a lot of learning from that. I don't think we got it exactly right, but definitely was an improvement from where the business was before. So I take a lot of pride in that. But 100% people business. There really was nothing else. It was just all people. So.
Yeah. So. Pretty much the same. I mean, on the search fund model, investors regularly look for three things: recurring revenue, low capex, growing industry. So if you're doing a search fund, and there's a reason behind that, and you're operating a new company out of the MBA, so recurring revenue definitely helps, not to screw things on the first few months. And if you got those attributes, then the driver of those companies are people, right? So we spend a lot of time on people. When we acquired the company, it was a 50 people business. When we sold it, it was 250 people plus. It's hard to change the culture. So when we invested in the company, it was a family-owned business. And what happened, it was the owner, he was the sole decision maker of the company. Then he had a second level of people that they were kind of really empowered persons within the organization. And they talked to the ear, to the owner. And then there were the rest of the organization. There were people that were used to going to the company on a 9-to-5 basis, and if they were sitting on their desk, they felt that they were doing their job. So we changed that, and basically we implemented KPIs for 100% of, well, close to 80% of the company. We also implemented a variable compensation plan for those 80% of the employees. And then we also set company values. So the name of the company was actually the initials of the owner. We changed that, saying those initials were the first letters of the values of the company. And then we set up a 3x3 matrix, the what and the how. And basically we did 2 times a year 360 degrees service on every single person on the company based on the company values and based on their KPIs. Therefore, if you were on this 3x3 matrix, if you were a 5 on the top side of the range, you were going to be promoted, you were going to have a big bonus, and you were going to have a good variable compensation plan. If you were a 1, that day you would leave the company. And then if you were a 2, you would go on HR would set some goals so you could perform better on your next evaluation. You were a 3, you were basically on the median of the company. So we changed kind of the mantra to hire and fire based on the company culture. It's hard because once you set this matrix, you got people that are a 3 in terms of they're hitting their goals on their KPIs, so they're doing a good job. But maybe those ones, in terms of company culture, they're a 1, right? And it's very important to let those people go, because if you want to have a good company culture and eventually get to a certain point, even if they're setting their goals and their KPIs, still those people, they're a cancer to the organization, and you have to let them go. It's a hard decision because once you go to the company, those people, they have good positions within because they're hitting the goals, and it's hard to let them go. But in order to, on the long term, if you do have a good company culture, then that essentially is what entails people to go work for you, to stay with you, and essentially at the end of the day to drive results.
Question for you is, were you a 5 on that, or were you a 3?
A solid 5.
I love that. And unfortunately, we don't have the time to delve into values and culture. I wish we did, because I feel like it's so important. Andrei, I loved what you'd mentioned at the end. Culture is a combination of what you create and what you allow. And I think that's a thing that all of us would embrace. But this journey that you took, I know that all of you would agree that it wasn't a job, it was a calling. And what I mean by that is that you carried with your responsibility in the seat that you were in everywhere you went, every hour and minute of the day. And so maybe to get a little more personal, if you could share with the audience the challenges that came up that seemed insurmountable at the time, what you did to overcome them, and then also, how did you deal with your stress? How did you deal with the stress of the role in a healthy way and work through those issues as well? So, Andrei, maybe you want to start.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, it's definitely a stressful job. So when I did the search, I told so I have a wife and 2 children. I told my wife, like, listen, the first 2 years of the search, they're going to be stressful. I'm going to work a lot because we're looking to acquire a business. We ended up investing 7 months into the search. So then we invested in the company, and I told her, like, listen, the first 2 years, they're going to be hard because we have to turn this around and, grow the business. And after 2 years, I went back to her and told her, like, this is going to be everything, like, for the rest of the days here in the company, it's going to be like this. Like, I'm not going to keep lying to you. Because once you operate a company, once again, as opposed to being on a work that you spend on spreadsheets and PowerPoint, I mean, operating a company is a 24/7 job, 365 days per week. On the insurance broker, I mean, we had...
Per week? That's 365 days
per
a week?
year, per
wow,
year.
That's a good way to describe it.
Per year. So on the insurance broker, we had events on weekends. I mean, basically all year long, and at first, I mean, you get immersed into the job, and you're so stressed towards getting those results that I think at the beginning you spend too much time maybe on the small details. How I coped with stress is that eventually you start on seeing kind of the big picture. Which are the actions that you're gonna take that they are actually gonna make an impact within the company, and what actions are not, and they're just gonna create you stress, and then you start on building that team that actually supports you, and you start relying on them on getting the results, and eventually I think happens what Nikita said, that and everyone here in this panel, that you start seeing kind of those people that report to you grow. You start seeing that company grow, and then that creates a great feeling, and in that way, you reach to the point that it's really fulfilling, regardless kind of on the investment returns. And that, I think, that essentially creates a stress away, because I mean, you're not doing it there just because of the returns to investors, which obviously are important, but you're doing it because it in itself is rewarding for yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying to sort of mentally go back to the time that I don't want to go back to. So probably early part of, thank you. Early part of 2021, there's definitely a moment where we had just, pulled the plug on this, on our tech stack, like I mentioned. We had hired a few people that were just bad hires, and I had to either fire them, or we knew they were going to walk out any minute now. There was because they were bad hires, there were patient issues coming up. So patients were like, things are going wrong, and it is only a matter of time before something goes wrong that becomes a life or death issue in this business. So like you're kind of on edge the whole time. I had at that point sort of found every gnarly compliance thing that was buried in this business, that I did not know about prior to buying it, which it's almost impossible to know. You kind of discover this through a beautiful journey over many months. So a lot of stuff had really gotten to the point where I was just like, I don't know if I can cope with another email that comes through my inbox that is less than like stellar. Like, this is going to be tough. So we had to have, I had a moment really with my team that was, at the time, the executive team was non-existent. It was me and a bunch of frontline managers and sort of the clinical leader of the business, and really had to talk about, like, look, either everything that comes across our path right now, we either survive or it takes us down. So if it's not like grinding you to a halt on your day-to-day, then it's just something that's going to make you stronger. So, like, let's push through it, right? And so I almost had a moment where I had to look back and think about, look, these are things that are kind of giving you the ulcers of strength, right? Like they will stick with you through the next chapter of whatever's coming. And so you kind of have to look at them as opportunities, because otherwise you'll just drown under the weight of it. So that moment of that conversation with the team was really cathartic. Really, a lot of people kind of needed a venue to share what they were going through. There's just a lot of people really pulling their weight, which was a huge benefit to me, because, you know, people that were working in the business were there for the right reasons, which was encouraging to know. You know, they were really there because they cared about patients, because they wanted to serve people. It was just, they needed a way to be supported and actually continue doing what they wanted to do. And that was my role, and that was what I realized is, you know, you're there to help people do ideally what they want to do. And if they're not, one, doing what they want to be doing, or they're not doing it at the level that is fulfilling to them and to the business, to some, you know, I think, Reid, your point, you kind of need to, it's kinder, and Brian too, it's kinder to say, look, you're not in the right place. Let's just end this before, you know, you go through this rigmarole of trying to put sort of the wrong peg in the wrong, you know, role kind of thing. So after that, we made a bunch of changes, really got through that initial growing pains period and came out of it, but definitely was a moment of really digging deep and finding kind of the reserves internally.
And like Nikita said, when you ask to choose one, you know, like, oh God moment, there's just so many to choose from. It's a very tough question. The hardest one for me, though, happened a couple months before the deal closed. There was my number one producing CDL driver quit, but he quit in a way that, let's just say that 5 years down the road from now, I think he'll look back on and not be very proud about how he did it. But it was an opportunity, because once I got past the negative feelings associated with that, I just went out for the foreseeable future, and I did his job for him in the field with my CDL. Then ended up hiring a replacement who, by the way, calls himself Ruthless. That's like how he brands himself. And in the kind of work that we do, a driver that calls himself Ruthless is like the best possible sign to hire. He was great for me while I still own the business. He's been a great addition for the new owner as well. So it worked out, and it was an opportunity to, again, lead by example and get out there and do it. And in that process, too, going to the question about, you know, useful habits, I'm lucky enough to be a member of EO, and also we have a ETA operator group here in Chicago. So I had a dozen individuals who operate small businesses and, you know, get the issues that are happening that I can call at 11 o'clock at night that will pick up the phone and be that sounding board. So when that challenge around the driver came out, and when the other hundreds of challenges came out, I had that group that is on call 24/7, and that is invaluable. So it's very important who you surround yourself with in this process. In regards to the habits, I'm all about, you know, discipline and having the right habits in place. For those of you that don't know, I always live in a high-rise in the Midwest. I get up every morning first thing, and I run up the stairwell as a way to get myself going. So if anyone, I live 4 blocks away, wants to climb tomorrow morning, just reach out, and that's available to you free of charge. I then take a cold shower afterwards to get myself mentally focused. I'm a big proponent of cold water immersion. So I just basically put the habits and the structures in place so that I have that necessary mental rejuvenation. I have 2 nieces. I teach them a Chinese character every week, and I make sure to get on Zoom and do that so I can, you know, have the proper mental balance. Do it on a personal side, do it in the business as well. I just think that small businesses are at their core a foundation of habits that are followed, and it's important to do that. And to the point that I heard Andrei say, it is all about that focus, right? The key is just not getting distracted by things that aren't really important, because the opportunity cost of your time as an owner or CEO is so high that you need to find what's important and then ruthlessly, mercilessly focus on it, and that's how you can drive results going forward.
You're like the most interesting man in the world.
No,
What don't
that
you
man
do?
right there,
Like,
Mike Toby, most interesting man in the world, FYI.
I don't have any. You don't want to follow my advice for managing stress. My strategy was to run harder to the finish line. It didn't work well. No, I got a coach. I would highly advocate that. As we were selling the company, I specifically remember 2 weeks before close. I had no business running a company, let alone selling to Johnson Controls. I'm on the phone with the general counsel who reports to the CEO of a public company, negotiating terms. And I had my call with my business coach shortly thereafter. And I remember leaving the phone call and just in passing saying, I just need to survive for 2 weeks. And he's like, whoa, we're not ending the call on that. And he said something that literally has shifted my perspective in my life. And he said, it's not survival, this is game time. And I was like, okay, this is great. And so we charged hard through the finish line, got the deal done, it was all good. So on that, I would say, get a coach, and it's all about mental perspective.
That's
Cold showers might work too.
Thanks, Brian. And I think there's an interesting and sometimes perplexing juxtaposition of humility and confidence that's required of ETA operators that you don't really understand until you go through it. You're like, how can you simultaneously be humble and incredibly confident? You're like, well, you just have to do it to know what that means. But anyways, okay, so we're gonna wrap up here. We've got about 7 minutes. If you could quickly share your exit story, however you want to do that, but I guess, actually, no, not however you want to do it. A little bit about how you maintain dialogue with your investors and board, if you had one, over the life of the investment, and then what prompted the decision to ultimately monetize. Go for it.
Yeah, so regarding the exit process, once again, we exited in 2020. We made the decision prior to the pandemic. It was a decision that we made with the board. We thought that we have reached the stage within the company, and as I said, we did 2 roll-up strategies. So we had on those 2 acquisitions, we had the shareholders from those companies join the board, and we thought that we had gotten to a point in which we were too many cooks in the kitchen. Therefore, kind of the decision-making process within the company was getting slower, and with that, we thought that kind of returns for investors could be diminishing if we kept on holding the company, because as a result, we were going to grow a little bit slower than we had grown on the past. So that was the main driver regarding the decision. Kind of towards the process, we thought about hiring a banker or doing the process ourselves. We thought that it would be best to hire a banker so he could be the one that carried the communications with both the board and other shareholders within the company. Therefore, me and my partner would not kind of be involved in that process if the process were to fail. Then kind of our relationship with both members and other shareholders would be intact and would not be tainted by the selling process. It was definitely not, and in retrospect, it was not the right time to sell in 2020. Probably the best time would have been in 2021. Having said that, now in 2022, I think it was a pretty good time. So once again, we did a bidding process, ended up selling to a New York-based PE firm.
Yeah, we had this inbound offer come in pretty early, I think about a year after the acquisition, and I really didn't take it seriously because it was just too soon, there was a lot going on. But kind of leaned on my board to guide me on that and said, look, if we want to engage with these people, sort of what would we be expecting from this? And so we put out, we kind of said this is the price to meet, and it would have basically helped me, return the amount of capital I wanted to for this investment and really meet all of the goals of the investment early, which was great. And we really didn't expect them to bite. So we left it out there, continued on, and had several months of growth and really started hitting a lot of the KPIs that I was focused on. Hiring kind of got smoother and smoother, really hitting our stride there. Had a couple of other practices under LOI. So it was kind of weirdly like anticlimactic because then they came back and said, yeah, we'll do it. And then it fell apart, and I was like, oh, you know what? I'm fine with it falling apart. We're like really getting going. I think we basically I got my executive team together, sort of re-upped on a lot of their incentive structures, really tried to give them bonus structures to really continue on and go on for another year. Everybody's very excited about it, and then sort of over the weekend, the buyer came back again and said, no, we'll do the deal, slightly better terms this time, and we really didn't have kind of a good reason to say no at that point, partly because the landscape was getting very complicated and just it would have taken another significant infusion of capital to grow the way we had been growing. And so talking with my board, talking with my investors, there was a moment of and they were very, very kind of wise in that moment and said, look, do you actually see yourself running this thing for another 10 years? If you say no to this opportunity, could you do it for that long? Because you need to be prepared for this to kind of go through the cycle again. And I think that was a moment for me to really think about, like, do I have what it takes, and is that the right decision for the business too? And ultimately, I think the fact that this group was, again, venture-backed, had really raised a ton of capital to do exactly what we're doing, but on a national scale, and had the resources and the talent and all that to do that well, kind of gave me confidence that it was the right thing for the business. And of course, it didn't hurt that the deal was great. So we ended up rolling equity into that entity that gives us an opportunity to participate as well. So that was that gave the investors and me some confidence that we weren't like leaving things on the table. But yeah, I mean, there was definitely a moment of like, I just figured this out, like, what? But no regrets. I mean, again, yeah, to the point of like in 2022, no regrets. Like things would have been very different, I think, had I continued down that path. So.
Great. So I'm self-funded, 85% SBA, 50% equity, so I had no board to report to. But when I bought the business, it was doing about $820,000 of adjusted EBITDA. At the end of 2021, my goal was always to grow it to over $1 million, so I hit that in 2021. So in January, I reached out. Well, I wanted to always sell the business with an ESOP because I'm all about employee ownership. So I started that process, actually got an ESOP SBA 7A deal approved, and I actually got it all the way through credit as well, which was equivalent to climbing Mount Everest for an ESOP and then climbing K2 afterwards for SBA 7A. Then I did also reach out to 3 intermediaries, 2 bankers, and also the broker that I bought the business from, and asked them for got opinions of value on it. Then the decision became, what's more valuable for team members, an ESOP or just cold hard cash bonuses? Because the numbers that came back, it was clear that at this transaction amount, I would working would be optional afterwards, right after a close. So with some good soul searching, determined that cash bonuses might be better than an ESOP. So I reached out to a strategic, which not myself, but a friend of mine. We actually he talked to them before the deal closed about how they would value businesses like this. So it took the highest of the intermediary value or the opinion of values, asked for the strategic for a 50% premium upon that. They accepted that price, which means that I'd be good, had enough money to pay the team members' retention bonuses. It's also important that if you give a working class or a blue-collar team member a lot of money, they very well might go off and buy their own truck and leave, but the strategic was on board with the bonus payment schedule, which was important. So signed the LOI with them in the middle of February, and then closed it at the end of May, and that's the all-cash deal. So that's the story, and it was. I'm not complaining. It was a great exit, over a 10x on the amount of equity I put into it, a 3-year period. So, yeah, no complaints overall. Buy a dirty business, never work again, right?
Love it, Reid. All right, Brian.
Yeah, I remember discussions with the board. We came into the investment with an M&A strategy and an organic growth driven by pricing strategy. And we had executed both of those within the first couple years. And so we had talked about testing the market at the 2.5 year mark, which is right when COVID hit. So then we rode that wave, trough really. And then we tested the market again early 21, got a good bite from Johnson Controls and pursued it. I do remember discussions with the board, just in the spirit of brevity. it was like, do we want to sell? Do we not want to sell? Do we want to keep it? What else do we think we can do with the business? I mean, nothing matters until you get the offer. And then usually the offer is pretty clear as to whether you're going to accept it or not. So there was a bunch of back and forth on what we would have done with the business had we kept it. But when you see the number, you take it.
Great. So I think we have just a few minutes for questions, guys. We have a little bit more ground to cover, but I'd rather have some questions from the audience, if you guys have any. Okay. All right. Well, then we'll close on. Oh, we got a question over here. Yeah. That was the question that we were going to close on. So perfect. And what advice would you have for searchers? Why don't we bundle those two? Yeah.
So what was it? Would you do it again?
Would you do it, knowing what you know now, would you do it again? And if so, what advice would you give folks that are looking to pursue the path?
Yeah, in some way I am doing it again. So I guess that the answer is yes. Yeah. I did not. Some people don't like operating. I loved it. I love building a team and creating that culture. So I'm excited to get involved in it again, just in a slightly different way. Advice would just be fully commit and go. I've never looked back. I started the comments on the panel saying the community was unbelievable, and I couldn't even anticipate how great that was going to be. So that'd be my advice.
Yeah, I echo that. I would absolutely do it again. The advice I'd give, though, is, be all in. But if you're not all in, you're in the way. And I would encourage you to think about which path you want to go. Do you want to be a CEO, which at its core is a job with a good equity component to it? Or do you want to be a business owner, right? So there's two different paths that you think about, traditional or sponsored versus a self-funded route. And just think about those two roles and which one you want to go to. And if you're willing to go into it, just be ready to get your hands dirty and ready for a fun, adventurous journey.
I don't think I'd add anything significant besides, just do it. And I think it's also a longer journey than it might look like from the beginning in the sense that, all of us have had one sort of or more turns at entrepreneurship and probably want more. And I think it's true for a lot of people that there'll be ups and downs, but there's always sort of another turn to play, I guess, which is really gives me a lot of hope.
So I will say this. I mean, prior to the conference, we had a Zoom with Alex, and he said, to this question, you have to answer yes, you will do it again. So, but yeah, I would definitely do it again. It was definitely a fun process. I would say regarding kind of what advice I would give you is basically do what you're doing, come to conferences, have talks with people that have gone through this process, and after those talks and getting to know both the good and the bad stories, I think especially the bad ones could help you out. Then make a decision if this is the right path for you. I don't think this is the path for everyone, but I think it's an amazing one. And if you choose to go through this route, you'll definitely have a great time. It'll be really fulfilling. But first, have those conversations before you make the decision.
All right, I think that wraps it up, guys. Thank you so much for your participation in the panel today.